Ding. Hi, sir. Welcome to Comic Relief. What can we help you find?
Hi, I've fallen behind on my reading, and I'm looking for a good jumping on point.
Oh, well, lucky for you, plenty of issue 1's came out this week. Josh, tell them all about them.
We have Hulk number 1, Doctor Strange number 1, Challengers number 1, Unexpected number 1,
Justice League number 1, Dazzler number 1, Deadpool number 1, and Ant-Man and the Wasp number 1. What can we help you find?
What can you tell me about Challengers?
It's a challenge to read.
Oh, man, what about the Unexpected?
There's nothing to expect.
Yeah, just expect that it'll be ending soon.
What about Justice League?
Same shit.
Same shit you've always read about Justice League.
Any new heroes, villains, anything?
Same lineup, same villain.
Well, what should I read then?
I got a $100 graphic novel that's perfect for you, sir. Come on this way. Seriously, just buy some shit.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll buy it.
All right, guys, welcome back. As you probably heard from our last podcast that got 10,000 views. Don't go and check. It definitely did. I already looked for you. We're doing our new segments now on kind of the umbrella being how to fix the comic industry. And today we're going to be focusing on the big plague some people feel is a problem in the comic industry, and that is just renumbering to issue 1's all the time. So we broke it down with a lot of different things. We're going to be hitting a few different talking points as far as what are the intentions behind this from the publishers? What are the pros of these new moves? What are the cons of these new moves? And we're going to end it with what are some of the alternatives, things they can do to improve this to see consistent sales numbers and not just, hikes up for the gimmicks of an issue 1. So some of the intentions that the publishers have are with issue 1's are to draw in new readers, right? To try and get a new reader to come in and be like, hey, this is a good access point for them. It's an issue 1. They can jump on here and they can continue a new story. And hopefully we have ourselves a new reader who's going to pick up the entire series.
The other intentions are to hike up sales numbers. Issue 1's usually sell a lot more because people think of collectible value.
Yep.
Which last year is a good point on that. We looked up the top so many graphic novels or comics, and they were
the top selling issues last year. Number 1 being Marvel Legacy number 1. Right behind that, well, not right behind, quite a few thousand more less was Dark Knight's Metal number 1. On there was also Secret Empire number 0 and Doomsday Clock number 1. So obviously issue 1's are your biggest selling items. Publishers know this. The other thing we also have is the intentions are to reinvent the characters, right? It's to try and give the character a new spin, something that we haven't seen before, something maybe a new direction that they want to take with this character. So they want to issue a number 1 on here and go, hey, here's a hot new, fresh take on this character. Try jumping on this if the last things maybe weren't working for you.
And then jumping off of that, another one is character popularity. They want to capitalize on the popularity of either movies or character spikes, such as Batman or popular films we've seen. They want to see a spike with that in association to comics.
Right, and a good example of that real quick is that Ant-Man and the Wasp comes out next month, and today we got a new issue 1 of Ant-Man and the Wasp that happens to feature Scott Lang.
The other purpose would be to start up an Elseworld, something that's not canon within that main storyline.
Yeah, something that kind of came out not too long ago was Nightwing, The New Order, where
White Knight.
Or Batman White Knight, yeah.
That's a better title.
It's
the better one.
Yeah. So to try to give writers a little bit more freedom to tell the stories they want to tell with recognizable characters that don't exactly have to be like this is a part of the character history. So that you can often see as a new issue 1. And the other thing is they want a competitive advantage over their competitors in the publishing industry. So like your Image, your Dark Horse, your Boom, your DC, your Marvel, IDW, Titan Comics, Valiant, all those guys. So what they try and do is they try and put out more issue 1's to try and take away from their competitors, so that buyers are spending more of their money on theirs than they are. Like Immortal Hulk number 1 came out today. Are you going to buy that, or are you going to buy Valiant High number 2? Most likely you're going to go with Immortal Hulk number 1. So some of the pros of this, as we've talked about, are in the intentions, right? The intentions often they want good results out of that. So some of the pros we're going to talk about is issue 1's do draw in new readers, right? Like today, a lot of Marvel issue 1's dropped, and so we saw here, especially at Comic Relief, we saw a lot of our Marvel issue 1's sell out on the shelves today.
I'm definitely here with the new titles of Immortal Hulk and Dazzler, Deadpool, Doctor Strange, it definitely oversaturates it to the point where you see mostly that. But it's definitely a good starting on point for most readers, and it just definitely draws in new readers because then they want to jump in.
Right, like me, for example, I'm not specifically a Hulk fan, but it was a number one, good jumping in point, and I read it, I understood the story, they relaunched something, so it's a good jumping on point for readers who have either been out of the game for a while or are just walking into the comic shop for the first time. It's a nice window of opportunity for them to get into it again.
Right, and using like the Immortal Hulk as an example, I know Dallas and Josh were not reading Totally Awesome Hulk. I was. But, we know that Amadeus Cho was that Hulk, and I think that lost a lot of readership. So what they're doing now is they're going to bring it back to the original Bruce Banner Hulk, and that's going to get people excited about it. It's an issue 1. It goes, oh, wow, here's an issue 1 of the Hulk. Hulk isn't somebody we're seeing a lot of movies out of right now. I mean, we see him as a supporting character, but, he's also a fan favorite of those movies. So now he's getting himself, it's Bruce Banner as the Hulk that has a lot of curb appeal for people, right? So they see that cover, they go, wow, that's a great Alex Ross cover, and it was.
Oh, yeah, it was.
And, picking up the Hulk. So another thing that they want to do, as we talked about, it's a better jumping on point, right? It's a better access point for people who may not have been reading that character's title, right? There's 5, 6 Spider-Man titles, but when an issue 1 comes out, you feel like, well, I kind of feel lost with these 5 or 6 Spider-Man titles, but here's an issue 1. Here's a great chance for me to jump on, especially next month when Nick Spencer and Ryan Ottley do the new Amazing Spider-Man #1. We're already anticipating some pretty high sales numbers for that book, but it's also it's a good access point. I mean, you got issue 800 right now. We know we're going to get an issue 801 on the shelves. That's going to deter a lot of people, but when they see it's an issue 1 sitting there with Spider-Man on it, you best believe that book's going to sell.
And then going off of that, it's a nice budget aspect. If I'm looking at 5 different Batman titles and a #1 comes out, I'd rather jump on a #1 as opposed to try and backlog and go back and collect all of them and read and catch up.
Right.
And that can seem pretty intimidating to some people who might be like a strict DC reader and they want to jump in onto a Marvel title or something.
Which we've been seeing a lot of here the past few days.
Yeah. It makes it kind of intimidating if you look at it and you see that like an issue is like on issue 30, let alone 800. You kind of go, well, I can't invest in that. That's already so far, away. So it makes it easier for them to jump on if it's an issue 1. Definitely.
Right, and that's definitely the thinking behind the publishers too. I mean, that's one of the aspects we talked about. The intentions it will bring in new readers, and hopefully those readers will continue to come in and get the books that precede it. The other things that they say that we know of that a pro is for the publishers is that there are definitely higher sales numbers for issue 1s, as we talked about too. Issue 1s sell like the dickens here, and I think that's in most shops. I mean, it's not all issue 1s, and we'll talk about that a little later, but more often than not, an issue 1 is going to outsell any book that's in the 20s, 30s, teens, 40s, 300s, 900s, whatever. I mean, Action Comics 1000 hit, that's a big, number, but then after Action 1000 left, and actually I don't think there's been an Action Comics since then, never mind, I was going to use that, but after books hit that issue 1 or they hit a big thing, then the numbers drop off again, right? So they know that it's a higher sales number. They can anticipate higher sales numbers, which means more money, more cash flow for them at that time. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, we can talk about, but they definitely see it as a good thing, and it can be a good thing. I mean, today we saw some really good sales numbers here at the shop, and we know that there's no small correlation with how many issue 1s came out and how many we're not sitting on anymore. And that kind of segues into like our potential for new consistent business. We know that as to be a pro too. If someone comes in, they get themselves an issue 1, they like the issue 1, they're going to keep coming back. They're going to come back for issue 2, 3, 4, 5. However long that series lasts, they might be coming back. They might drop off depending on quality of storytelling, but there's that potential there to get a new reader, more money in your pocket. But again, there are cons to almost every one of these things. The next thing that could be a pro is it's new content, right? It's something that maybe everything that's going on right now doesn't interest a new person who wants to come into the comic shop. And they're looking through the shelves and they see all these different titles of characters, and maybe these numbers are a little too far out for them, but it's new content for someone to go, okay, here's something I can get behind. Right here, they can maybe even flip through it and go, wow, this looks like a different Spider-Man take than I'm used to, or maybe it's a different take on the Justice League, and I go, maybe I can get into this. I'm gonna check this out. I can check this series out.
Well, like your example, Totally Awesome Hulk. I personally do not like Totally Awesome Hulk. I don't really care for Amadeus Cho. But seeing, new content, new character, new creative team, it does kind of make me go, okay, well, maybe I could jump back into a Hulk series.
Which I think that goes great with our intention of Elseworld stories. That opens up these issue 1s, that opens up for these different stories, different characters, different versions of the characters, as opposed to, as you said, ruining the canon and changing something drastically that ruins everything that they've set up. Yeah. So it's a perfect opportunity for them.
Yeah, and then this one kind of leads into our next pro, which is rebranding. The other thing that's kind of another pro is maybe there's a character that showed up in a TV show or a movie, or maybe it showed up in another storyline that you're following, and it's a character that hasn't had an ongoing series for a while. Like this week, Dazzler came out. Maybe that can strike some interest. Maybe people might grab it because they might be a little intrigued by that character and would like to see that character and read more of that character, and that's the perfect way of doing that instead of trying to go back and hunt down an old series that might be definitely out of date. Because if you're a person who is a fan of Dazzler, if you went back and read her last ongoing series, it's definitely dated.
Yeah, and then, under the title of rebranding, you can also get a new creative team behind it too, which means you're getting a new take on this character. So you're definitely trying to rebrand that character or retool that character for a new audience, or, even sometimes what happens is series get stale, right? We've seen this happen, innumerable amount of times, where a series just goes and goes and goes, and you just see the sales just tail off, and that series became stale. So what they do is they end it. They're gonna maybe it's an X-Men title, right? That X-Men title, it grew stale. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna start a new X-Men 1. It's gonna be a new writer, new illustrator, maybe even a new team lineup, and hopefully that revitalizes that book. It revitalizes that title, and it gets more people interested.
And a good example of that one, me personally, I would say would be like Nightwing. Nightwing Rebirth was good starting off, and then it starts getting stale. And so what do? They put out the Elseworlds Tale of Nightwing New Order, which Jake mentioned earlier, which is actually a good story, and it's a good little Elseworlds Tale based in the future. And it kind of makes that character, and so people who are probably going like, hey, I don't really like this new Nightwing story that's ongoing, you jump in onto this one because it's a new one, and you kind of go, I did want to read something Nightwing, so here I go.
And the benefit of doing an Elseworlds or an off-jumping, starting a new series, is they can either pick up back where they were before because they've got new interest in it again. So they read New Order and they're like, man, Nightwing's got me hyped. I want to read some more Nightwing. They can either relaunch again with another #1, or they can continue where they fell off, where it got stale. So it increased interest among the market.
Yep. It's another thing that an issue 1 allows publishers to do, and to a lesser extent us retailers, is it offers more diverse storytelling. What you can do is you can have an issue 1 of Batman, an issue 1 of Superman, an issue 1 of Cyborg or Flash or whatever. But the thing is, like, if these characters don't really appeal to you, you can put out an issue 1 of a character that never really carried their own title before, and then maybe that is an entry point for some new readers, some new collectors who go, I don't really want Flash, I don't want Batman, Superman, or Spider-Man, or Wolverine, or anything like that. I want something new, I want something fresh. So it allows you to expand what you can tell a story about. Whether or not it's always successful is a different thing, right. But it does open that door.
Yeah, it's an opportunity for them to expand their world. If you do like Spider-Man, but you're kind of stale on Spider-Man right now, they come out with another title that maybe he closely works with Spider-Man and knows Spider-Man, that may get you into this new character as well as back into Spider-Man, so it's a perfect opportunity.
Good example of that is all the other Spider-Man storylines, like Scarlet Spider, Spider-Man with Miles Morales, and Spider-Gwen.
Spectacular Spider-Man.
Spectacular Spider-Man.
Silk.
Yep, Silk.
Yeah.
It can go for days.
Yeah, no kidding. But also what it can do is it can offer kind of a palate cleanser too, right? I mean, DC is trying to do that right now with all these new DC Heroes titles, right? They're trying to offer a plethora of new readers, new characters, and give you something different to read than what you're used to. Again, whether or not they're successful is a different argument, but it's there for you if you want it. So there's also cons to that, but we'll get into that. And one of the last pros that I think we're all more excited about is that it offers writers a chance to leave their imprint on maybe a classic character. We've seen this hundreds of times where a writer will start off a series and then a new writer takes on that series halfway through. But if you go to an issue 1 and it's a new creative team, it's a character that you've never seen write this, or it's a writer you've never seen write this character before, like the Immortal Hulk. I've never seen Al Ewing write the Immortal Hulk. That has me a little bit more excited because I'm like, this isn't somebody who's written the Hulk before, so I know that I'm going to be getting a new perspective on the Hulk. I'm going to be getting a new take on the Hulk. And it's fun for me to have read Immortal Hulk #1 and go, okay, they're going back to like a classic monster tale here. You know, it's something I haven't seen from the Hulk before. They've tried other things where Mark Waid did the Indestructible Hulk and he's working for S.H.I.E.L.D. because, as we know, Bruce Banner is a genius, right? So why not utilize Bruce Banner for his genius intellect and employ him as an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. And we've seen all the other ways, but it's been a long time since we've seen somebody do the monster take on the Hulk. And from a new writer who's never done it before, they can offer up something new. And I think that becomes, for us collectors anyway, something that's very exciting.
I agree. Like a good example is Deadpool #1. Scotty Young writes a little writer's note at the end, explaining that he was originally wanting to write for Deadpool, but Duggan's been on Deadpool for a couple of years at this point, and he was wanting to write for them, and they wasn't going to allow it. But they did allow him to jump in and start a Rocket Raccoon #1, which actually the first issue did great. Granted, it was the #1, but that run, there's a lot of people that really like that run. And so now he's finally getting to write for Deadpool, which it gives you a different take. You know, we've had about I can't remember how many years, I think it's since 2014, of Duggan writing for Deadpool. Now we get a different writer on Deadpool. We get a different kind of voice for him, and we kind of see how somebody else will take that.
Right, or another example is Dan Slott, right? It's the Amazing Spider-Man for almost 10 years, you know? As much as I've enjoyed Slott's run, I'm not going to say that I'm opposed to the idea of somebody new coming in, lending Peter their voice and seeing how it goes. I mean, Nick Spencer, he wrote Secret Empire and the Steve Rogers Captain America, controversial stuff. Kind of excited what he can do with Peter Parker. And then on the opposite side, there's Tom King, who's writing Batman, who's almost at issue 50 now. Wouldn't mind seeing somebody else come in and take over for Batman.
I think that connects pretty closely with our diversity. The best thing about the comic community is I can come in here and go, well, this is my favorite version of Aquaman, and you have a different version, but it's because we've been allowed different takes and opportunities to read these different versions. If we don't have that, we have one steady take on a character for years and years and years, and while some people do appreciate that, it does get stale, and that's how you get to cancellations. And providing these new opportunities opens these windows for new writers and new teams to come in, and it's just a joy to all of us. I mean, one of my favorite things is to come in and debate on what my favorite version of this character is, and you can debate for days on it, and it's just a great opportunity for the community, not necessarily in terms as a retailer, just as a community.
Right, and it kind of falls under the umbrella of reinventing that character.
Right.
You know, we've seen we saw the way Scott Snyder reinvented Batman. He reinvented the Joker with the New 52 Batman. We saw the way Jeff Johns reinvented New 52 Aquaman from what he had previously been. You know, we get to see these guys' iterations and their takes on them, and that's something that's exciting. But again, there are always cons to all these sides. So those are some of the pros that we decided we could come up with the good that could come out of the issue 1s. Now it's time to take it over to the other side of the fence
And trash it.
And go over some of the cons, the things that we as comic book fans love to do, which is just bitch and complain.
Yep.
Something that I think we are all notorious for. If you don't believe me, go ahead to any goddamn comment section on Facebook right now. It has on CBR, comicbook.com, what have you. Look at the comments section. It's nothing but complain. So let's throw some fuel on that fire and start complaining about some things that happen with issue 1s. The renumbering. We hear this time and time again. Why are they renumbering it to issue 1? Why are they doing this? Why, they
just got done renumbering 6 months ago.
Yeah, well, that's kind of like the relaunches and stuff. But yeah, there was just an issue 1 6 months ago. There's just an issue 1 for this, a year ago. Now they're putting out another issue 1. It's a way to alienate readers, I think, sometimes.
And especially if you're following a story and then all of a sudden they renumber it and you're like, I was actually interested with where this was going. Now I don't want to read this because I'm pissed off about it.
Yeah, it definitely, the people who come and your ongoing readers, it takes away for you, because a lot of times you get pride when you like a good example. I'm going a little off segment here, and
fine.
just tell me when I'm going too far.
I thought you were going to go Green Arrow.
A good segment is we are all collectors here. Mm-hmm. Our big things in our collections right now is you got Dallas over here who's collecting Daredevil, which he's collecting Daredevil Volume 1, It's like to about 300 issues. That's a
Before
big collection.
before it got renumbered.
Yeah, before it got renumbered. Jake here collects Iron Man, Volume 1. So, like, and that's about another 300 issues.
I've got like almost the first
Having
300 issues.
300 issues of one ongoing run would be the most completed, wonderful feeling that you would ever have for completion. And in this way, yeah, you get it, but it's like 30 issues, 20 issues, 12 issues is most of them. It's not, you won't get that feeling.
Right.
It's renumbering does take kind of takes the fun out of collecting books.
It does, and it can take the wind out of your sails. And I mean, they even did it with the Bendis Daredevil run, which is like, it was issues, I don't remember, but then they go over to issue 500. It's kind of the way Marvel Legacy just did all their shit, where they just took all the numbers and then, decided to take it back to the original numbering. But they did it during the Bendis run too, and it as a reader, it almost confused the shit out of me. I'm like, hold on, I went from issue like 32 to 500. How the fuck did this happen? And so it also causes a little bit of confusion for longtime collectors as well.
Right, and for any market, not necessarily comic books, any market, the one thing that you're always taught and you always want to avoid is confusion amongst your customers. Because when you confuse them, they're less likely to buy something. And that's bad as a business practice, because you want to make your material accessible and easy for them to understand and get. Just pick it up and continue go on and make your $3, $5, $20, whatever you're buying. You want to make it accessible to every customer, no matter where they're at. You want to avoid confusion.
Right, and we as retailers, we can often, it's easy to push issue 1s on people, right? As we talked about before, it's an easy access point. It's a way to garner new readers and stuff like that. But on the flip side of that, it's like, well, hey, what about the old series? We get questions pretty often about the series that preceded these issue 1s, and does that series lead into this one? And it becomes really hard to explain, because it can get so convoluted, and you don't realize how convoluted it is as a reader until you try and verbally explain it out loud to somebody else, how ridiculous it sounds.
And then that kind of goes to ruining canon, because I can't tell you, like Batman Beyond specifically, right now in Rebirth they've changed a few things, and I'm not going to go into them, but they've changed a few things that changed the canon just slightly, or like Justice League Unlimited changed the canon slightly. And then it confuses people, because you try to explain the timeline and you're like, well, there was this like 5-year run where this thing happened. And
right.
You lose people because they're like, I don't know what I should be reading to
Or
understand.
there was like in between, there was a 5-issue series like the Unworthy Thor. I've been trying to sell, I've been talking to people about the Jason Aaron Thor. I'm like, well, yeah, he did the God of Thunder stuff, and then Original Sin happens, and then the Mighty Thor, and then in there's like the Unworthy Thor 5 issues. It's like, Jesus Christ, like just tell an ongoing series,
Right.
It becomes tough, because issue 1s can alienate readers, because they had invested time, they had invested their money, they had invested their interest into these ongoing series, and the next thing you know, they just, at the drop of a hat, that series is over and it's been renumbered.
Which also leads to a good another transition to another good point, which is, okay, you kind of lose the faith of your main readers, the main people that come in and read, because you don't really want to jump onto a series that you feel like it's only going to last, that could only potentially last for 4 or 5 issues, and then before you have to go and read another starting off point.
Right, and that's something that we had talked about the new DC hero stuff. I can't see some of these series going on for very long. So why would anyone feel inclined to pick up issue 1 when they're not sure this thing's even going to run 5 issues? It's
a good point for me would be Black Panther. Like, that book has been renumbered at least 3 to 4 times since issue codes have been on it.
They just renumbered it from Legacy, so it went from like issue 17 to like 166, and now it's
back to 1.
Yeah,
and they just keep renumbering it when it really could just be one ongoing series.
Right, it's because it's the same writer. It's a continuous series, but it's like, hey, Black Panther the movie just came out. Let's give people an issue 1. Unfortunately, they didn't really strike while the hammer was hot, or they didn't strike while the iron was hot, because now we're sitting on a lot of issue 1s, because Black Panther was back in February. Here we are in June. And
I think the biggest part with that one compared to the other titles like Doctor Strange and Hulk and everything is Black Panther has been renumbered so often, within the past couple of years, that people are just kind of like, okay, what's new? I'm used to seeing Black Panther being renumbered.
Even as a retailer, I can't really tell people where to jump on with Black Panther, because there are so many different runs. I'm not even exactly sure of the timeline anymore, because they didn't just keep the series going. And so even as the retailer, I also can't recommend the Black Panther series because I just stopped reading it. Even as the retailer, the guy who has this stuff basically accessible to him for free, I have no interest in trying to read it anymore because it's gone all over the place. There's Rise of the Black Panther running parallel congruently to this new Black Panther series, and it was running congruently to the previous Ta-Nehisi Coates series. So it's just like, focus up. All right, so another thing that we can talk about is something that we can consider a pro and a con, depending on how you're looking at it. But when you release, like Marvel did today, you release so many issue 1s at once, you take away your competition, right? You take away from Marvel, takes away from DC and Image and Valiant and IDW and all these guys and Dark Horse because they release so many that people are like, they only have so much money. Right. Everyone has a disposable income to a certain extent, but some people have more than others, but there is a limit to your disposable income. And so when you release all these new issue 1s and you give readers this promise, like, hey, here's all these series you can start to jump onto right here. Here's a great jumping on point. Well, now they're not going to want to jump onto or pick up some of the other titles they would normally would because, hey, here's a chance to start off from issue 1 and get maybe the long-form storytelling out of it. So there's a pro there, but it's also, it's a pro for maybe Marvel here, but it's a con for everybody else. It's a con if you're not putting out the issue 1s.
Well, a good example is some stuff also gets overlooked. Even as a comic book store, Death and Glory issue 1 came out, I think, about a month or so ago, and as a store, we overlooked it. They don't sell very well, and mostly we also have to sit here and make sure we get all these major titles in and all these major issue 1s that we don't even notice the issue 1s from Image. And Jake read Death and Glory. We finally got a second printing of that in here, and he says it's probably better than some of the issue 1s from Marvel.
Oh, it definitely was. I really liked Death or Glory, and yeah, now we got 2 issues out of it, and it's something that I didn't think was going to pick up because this month, so many issue 1s are going to come out from Marvel, and I know that's what people are going to be looking for as opposed to Death or Glory. So now, we talked about it before we were airing, when people are confronted or presented with so many options, it's almost overwhelming, and it will deter you from buying stuff as opposed to having just a small selection and being able to weigh your options. When there's so many, you brought up like the Baskin Robbins, Josh. It was like 31 flavors. I walk into Baskin Robbins, I've never been in before. There's 31 flavors in front of me. I don't know what the fuck I'm going to get. I went in here going, I know I probably want some chocolate ice cream. Well, now you got 12 different types of chocolate ice cream. I don't know what the fuck to pick from.
Right, and me personally, if I go into something and I've got 2 options and I don't know a whole lot about it, but I really want this title specifically. I'm like, I like this character, I haven't read him in a while, and I walk in and there's 6 new titles. I might go home and look at reviews and then completely forget about it tomorrow and just end up not buying it. Mm-hmm. So it's confusing me and pushing me away, and something we didn't actually talk about that I thought of was it actually, in a way, not directly, but encourages illegal reading online. If I don't know what title to read, I'm not going to pay for it. I'm not saying I would do it. I'm just saying as a
but there
general
are
customer,
plenty of readers out there.
But they would rather go on for free and read through them as opposed to come in and pay $2, $3, $4 for something they have no idea, especially if it doesn't last long. Why would I invest 4 titles for it to get canceled when I can just not invest in it or someone else, read it online for free?
Now, it's good to have more options, because in that way you can kind of hit any kind of reader. Certain kind of readers always have little tiny different tastes and everything, and it's nice to have those little things. But it is, a fact that if you take somebody and you put them in a place like Baskin Robbins and you give them 31 flavors to choose from, they're going to be a little bit more anxious. It's going to be a little bit more of a headache to try to pick something compared to if you take them to an ice cream stand that only has 3 flavors. They're going to end up being a lot happier because they didn't have to think as much to try to find out what they want.
And I think that's something that a lot of companies and publishers and everything don't think about. Going back to, you don't want to confuse the person, you want to make it easy on them. So you walk into your ice cream shop, they walk in, I've got chocolate, vanilla, and whatever random flavor. I know what I want because I've got these 3 options, whereas 31 or 6, 7 new Marvel titles, I don't know what I want. So I have to either go through and flip through them and, judge on either budget or my interest on the character or reviews, as opposed to just coming in and going, that looks interesting, there's only 1 new title this week, I'm definitely grabbing that.
Right, it's a flooding the market strategy, which again can be good and bad. It can be good for whoever's flooding the market, it can be bad for any of your competitors, but also it can be a con for whoever's flooding the market because you invest all this time and money and resources where you go, well, we're just going to basically take a handful of darts, throw the dartboard, see what sticks. With us retailers kind of just left out to dry with sitting on a bunch of shit that doesn't move.
Right.
You know, because there were so many options for people to choose from, they had to inevitably pass up on something. And we end up sitting on the stuff that they end up passing on because some stuff's just going to be more popular, like Dazzler. We have a shit ton of Dazzler up there right now.
Yeah.
No one gives a fuck about Dazzler.
To be honest, and the thing is even if nobody gives a shit about Dazzler, there's a lot of people who are into X-Men titles, and they probably would have picked it up today. But Immortal Hulk kind of took their eye. So instead of getting that book, they were more prone, which it's in turn, it's Marvel hurting themselves. So people that normally would probably pick it up didn't pick it up because they were too busy looking at all the other beautiful issue ones that came out.
So Dazzler might be sitting up there for about 3 weeks before someone decides, you know what, there's not a whole lot new out. I'll spend $4 on this and see how I feel about it, you know.
So they're basically shooting themselves in the foot with these titles like Dazzler that may be popular amongst certain groups.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely a niche thing, but
right,
yeah.
Whereas the Hulk might be more broad in terms of who would like it. Dazzler may end up being a series that gets canceled because they're overshadowing it, not promoting it in the correct way, or canceling or closing down and condensing their title releases.
Yeah. I'm going to go off on a tangent real quick. I don't know who the hell was in charge of putting out a Dazzler issue 1, but that character, no one's given a shit since the early 90s. Why? I don't get it, but okay. All right, so another thing that is a huge detriment with issue 1s, especially to retailers, is everyone thinking that they're valuable. It's this weird self-fulfilling prophecy that's happened with issue 1s, right? Everyone knows if I find, the Amazing Spider-Man #1, Action Comics #1, Iron Man #1, all these, Batman #1, all these issues, I know they're worth a shit ton of money now, right? I've held on to them all these years, or I got my hands on it for a good price. I can sell this thing, make 200% of what I paid for it, whatever. Now, Marvel knows this, DC knows this, these publishers know that people have gotten it in their head that issue 1s might be worth money one day. They know that they'll make a lot of money. So it's this weird thing. It's like, yeah, we know we'll make a lot of money selling these issue 1s, but they mass print them. So now the value of those books, the possibility of those books ever appreciating in value goes down because of how many you put out. But it doesn't stop the people from thinking that issue 1 is going to be worth a lot of money one day. So they come in and they get all these issue 1s. They want all the issue 1s, and that is a terrible metric for retailers like us who have to order issue 2. We have to order issue 3. We have to order issue 4 because there are those people that come in who only want issue 1s. We have a couple people that come in here and they just want the issue 1 of every new title because maybe it'll be worth something one day. Maybe it introduces a new character that in 10 years they'll make a movie out of, and bam, I got the first appearance of that character, whatever. But it's this weird self-fulfilling prophecy because the publishers know issue 1s sell. So they know people are going to buy them. So they just keep making money. They just keep making money off of issue 1, so they have no incentive to not be putting out issue 1s anymore.
Well, the main thing about that too is also like there is a way the issue 1 could potentially be a little bit more in price, but that's not saying anything. Like any issue could also be potentially go up in value for a collector. Good example: New Mutants #1 it's a pricey book. It's not price super, but it can be
$12 sometimes.
$10 to $12. But New Mutants '98 is a $400 to $500 book. That's almost 100 issues down the road, and that book is more valuable than the issue 1.
Right.
I'm not trying to say that I don't think that all issue 1s are doesn't grow up in value. Some of them do, but when it's something like Dark Metal issue 1. That book was mass printed. That book, a lot of people, yes, are online and they're spending about $10, $12 on it now, and it shouldn't be up that high. But really, the value of that book is only like $6,
it's pretty much still cover price.
It's still, exactly. When you look at the cover price, it's about the same thing as cover price because it's mass produced, it was mass printed, and it's just they overdid it with it. So a lot of issue 1s, you gotta be careful because sometimes it's your issues that are just randomly in there. That just randomly kind of sit into the series.
Teen Titans 12.
Teen Titans 12. That is going to be way more expensive than Teen Titans #1 Rebirth.
First full appearance of Batman Who Laughs.
Exactly. So it's not, you just kind of got to make sure you do your research and everything. Not all issue 1s are actually going to be worth money, but what ends up happening is you do end up hurting your local comic book shop because they have no clue on what to order for issue 2 because they go, well, I got 15 of these issue 1s in and all of them are gone. So you get 15 of issue 2 and you only end up getting 3 ongoing readers. And then you're sitting on a stack of these books that nobody's probably going to ever pick up.
2 good points I have to add to both of those comments is Metal is a perfect example of that. Like you said, number 1 sold a lot, flew off the shelves, even though it was so mass produced. Whereas issue number 6, I think, are you guys still
We're still sitting on a couple
Still
issues.
sitting on-
Yeah,
we're
and
still sitting on 4,
we
5, and 6.
considerably lowered the amount that we ordered of issue 6 from issue 1, and we're still sitting on a couple.
Right. So it just because it's a number 1 does not equal success, not only in terms of value but story quality. And the other one, talking about maybe number 1's not as worth as something else. Spawn, for example, number 1's like 50 cents. You can find it in 50-cent bins everywhere. Whereas I think it's issue 9 is the first appearance of Angela, and that's not a lot, but it's like $20.
Well, depending on where you're going, that Spawn number 1 actually is about it's about a $50 book now.
If it's the misprint, the regular one, well, with the
regular one's still
yes.
about a $10, $15 book.
The movie one will bump it
But
up.
the thing
when I
is,
looked at
it's an
value,
issue
it was
1 that's only $10 or $15. It's
That came out in the
25 years
90s,
old.
yeah.
You know, it's because there are literally warehouses full of this book still.
Right.
Oh yeah, Death of Superman, another one, but
Yeah.
that's not number 1. But still, it's just the mass printing does hurt them. While you have Walking Dead over here, which is an Image book, not a Marvel or DC, and it was not mass printed, and that book is in the thousands. That issue 1. I mean, that's a perfect example of also oversaturating the field of comic books and not acknowledging your lower publishers because Marvel and DC is drowning the smaller publishers. And that's what you need to be looking at. You need to be looking at the things that are not going to be published or print a lot. So like Death or Glory.
Look at
it could end up
Invincible
being
number 1.
huge. Yeah, Invincible number 1.
Yeah.
It's these titles
$400 or $500 book now.
Yeah. You're people who come in and getting Superman number 1 or Justice League number 1 that's probably been renumbered about 5 or 6 times
In the past 10 years,
yeah,
at least.
in the past 10 years, those books aren't going to be the ones that are going to be the high dollar book. It's going to be the books that they don't print a whole bunch of. And then a lot of times those are going to be, anymore, it's most likely going to be your Image, Dark Horse, or Boom.
Right, and it's the publishers thinking that they're pulling the wool over our eyes with this shit, but any comic collector worth their salt knows that these issue 1s, for the most part, are a gimmick on your big characters, right? You're gonna have an Iron Man number 1 coming out soon, a number Thor coming out soon, number 1 soon, Sentry number 1 coming out soon. You're having all these books come out. They're not gonna be worth a damn. They really aren't. But the thing is, we as comic collectors show up in droves, buy out these issue 1s, so the publishers aren't learning their lesson. They're like, look, we're putting out an issue 1, we're making a shit ton of money. You know what I mean? It's like if a kid steals a goddamn cookie from a convenience store and you don't slap him, he's going to come back and steal it again next time. You know, it's just, there's no lesson to be learned, but unfortunately issue 1s are selling, and there's no metric for us as retailers to go, okay, well, I ordered X amount of issue 1, how many issue 2s do I read or do I order? You know, and then possibly, I mean, I've been in both sides of this. I have not ordered enough of the issue 2s, and I've ordered too many of the issue 2s. It's a crapshoot. You know, because we've all been trained basically and groomed to think issue 1s are a big deal. We need them. We must have the issue 1s. And unfortunately, that doesn't work out too well for anybody but the publishers. So, all right. Another thing that's a con to the issue 1s is they are always jacked up in price. Now, this isn't a big deal. You know, we've come to expect it. Again, something we've been kind of groomed to know is that an issue 1 is almost always $1, about $1 more or so than all the predecessor issues. You know, like right now, I think Immortal Hulk was $4.99. Every issue after that most likely is going to be $3.99. The Dark Knight Metal books were all $3.99. Most of your DC title books are $2.99. So they jack up the price on this. Again, part of the self-fulfilling prophecy is why they see so much higher sales numbers is just you've upped the cost of these books, and that's, again, it limits the amount of things that people can buy that day. Because if I go in, I want three new issue 1s. Well, if I got 3 new issue 1s from Marvel, I've spent about $15 and then the tax that comes with it. Whereas if I were to just have gotten about 5 DC comic books for about the same price. So you're seeing higher sales numbers, but you're not seeing as high unit sales.
Right, and that $1 difference is a quote-unquote justifiable difference.
Right.
If I'm going to buy a number one, I'm like, well, it's a buck
It's
more.
just a buck,
It's okay. But, 100,000 people buy that. They've made a decent amount of chunk of change, and they're like, hey, that $1's making a difference to us. Maybe not to every individual person, but it's making a difference to us, so we're just going to keep doing it and keep doing it until we start to see the market flop and people be upset about it.
Yeah, and the thing is too, in an issue 1, there's almost never any more content than any other issue. You're literally paying an extra $1 for that number 1 printed on that book.
It's very. Like, I think Deadpool is just a little bit longer than a normal comic book, but it's very seldom do you actually see an issue 1 that's actually like a giant size or
an 80-page spectacular.
Yeah.
Well, the Amazing Spider-Man was number 800 was 80 pages, right? It was worth every penny that $9.99, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
Action Comics 1000 was $7.99, pretty much worth every penny of that $8 you spent.
Yeah.
Because you got more content in that. But when you get Justice League number 1 right here, no more pages than any other regular book, but it's still $3.99. Every issue after that's going to be a $2.99 issue. So it's just something that hurts. That in the long run will probably hurt that hurts the market. It really does. It hurts us as retailers. It hurts us as buyers.
And it also hurts you guys as sellers or buyers. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just said that.
Yep.
Fuck.
And then one of the last cons we're going to talk about is books that no one seems to give a shit about. And right now, the best examples I've got are these, Dazzler, but then you've got these new DC Heroes books, right? I'm still sitting on the New Challengers, a lot of the Unexpected, Immortal Men. I'm somehow still sitting on an issue of The Silencer.
Ant-Man and the Wasp: Living Legend. Like, Ant-Man and the Wasp issue 1 came out today, and
that's
also
right.
Ant-Man and the Wasp: Living Legend came out today. Both issue 1s. Granted, Living Legend's probably just going to be a one-shot, but that doesn't say that it's going to be a one-shot.
No.
But nobody's going to want that book.
Nope.
Not when there's also the ongoing series that came out the same day.
Right,
Exactly.
and that connects to oversaturating the market. I mean, I've read a few of the DC Rebirth metal titles, whatever you want to call them.
New DC Heroes.
New DC Heroes, and some of them are actually good. There's a few. Brimstone was decent. Silencer was decent. I read Immortal Men. That was god-awful because there was no direction.
Yeah.
And they just kind of threw out a title after a big event to make money. And that's what a lot of these new DC heroes are. There was a big event that they made some money on, so they're just going to release these characters and make more money and just reap the benefits of that event.
But the weird thing is, while we're all asking for new characters and new heroes and stuff like that to diversify comic books, nobody asked for these books because these characters were never introduced in Metal. So there's no smart way that you spun this out of Metal to go, oh man, I remember this character Sideways from Metal, and now I want to read his own ongoing series. It's like, no, you just made it all up after Metal ended, and here's all these books. And some of them are so poorly conceived and so poorly written, and some of them not really well illustrated that there's no way these series end up being ongoing series. These things will die out by next year. These series won't be going on anymore, and no one's going to care. So you put out all these books hoping people are going to pick them up, but you didn't invest the time or the resources to make them quality books to keep people coming back for more of them.
Hell, I don't even see some of these new characters being introduced into the main storylines.
No, and that's one thing we were talking about off air is, what was the point of introducing these characters into the DC universe? They don't really cross over other than the Terrifics. That have Mr. Terrific and Plastic Man and Metamorpho, who are all, established DC characters. Right. Everyone else, they're all brand new characters.
Well, Firebrand from The Unexpected, I think, is a
but she's so
character.
Minuscule. No one's picking that book up because of Firebrand.
Yeah, we don't have a whole lot of people coming in here, but man, Firebrand's my favorite DC
Yeah,
character.
she's so underrepresented. But the thing is like no one cares about these books. No one wanted these books. Why did you? There's a gimmick here in that you're releasing them as the quote unquote new DC heroes. Whereas had you released them maybe under your Vertigo titles, maybe they'd actually find some success there.
Right, or actually connect them to the event. They basically spun them out of the event to make money as opposed to putting them in the DC universe. It was more putting them in the event that happened just so they could make the money, the gimmick.
Right. There was just no organic way that these characters fit into Metal, and that there's no organic way now that they fit into the DC universe.
Right.
There are these weird outliers that if you don't read them, your life as a comic book collector doesn't change an iota one way or the other.
So we could almost say it's like making a team-up movie without putting out the proper solo films.
Oh my goodness. It's a good thing we've never had that before.
Yeah.
Which this
That would be a huge box office flop.
Could be.
Which we would probably dive more into this, especially with the new DC Heroes on the segment where we talk about events.
Right.
Because that's definitely kind of fits with that.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of these things because one thing kind of feeds the other in comic books. There's no way to truly just separate them on their own island. So there's going to be some overlap in the oncoming segments, but we want to try and go as deep and insightful on these things as we can while we have the time. So those are some of the biggest cons we could think of. We got the intentions that these issue ones are released under, like the pretenses they're released under, why they are released the way they are, what the pros of doing it the way they do it are, what the cons are of the way they're doing it are. I hope you guys liked all of our bitching. Now, the last thing we're going to end on is some of the alternatives that these publishers could be taking. Some things that are maybe more sustainable business models, or to keep readership consistent, or to even improve readership. So one of the first things that comes to mind, and it seems like a pretty obvious thing to say, is focus more on your continuing storylines, right? Where if you have a writer and an artist come on for a 12-issue series of, fucking The Runaways, right? You have these 12 issues planned out, but you don't tell us it's a miniseries. You have every intention of this being ongoing. But then you want to, cut it off and you'll start up a new Runaways title. Or Black Panther being one of the biggest culprits lately. Black Panther had their issue 1, got renumbered at Legacy. Now there's another issue 1 with a recycled cover, I should add. This is a cover we've seen before.
About 3 times now.
Yeah. And it's like, why are you reissuing this number? Why are you renumbering this when it's still the same writer on this and it's picking up from where the last story left off? Why don't you just keep it going? Focus on telling a quality story, and you're going to gain readership, just like we had talked about with movies and stuff. When a comic book series gains good word of mouth because the quality is there, the writer and the artist show up because they really care about this series, people are going to talk about that. Then people are going to come in and say, hey, I want to jump in on this story. Where can I start? How many times have we turned somebody on to the new Green Arrow series from Rebirth, right? They didn't start off from issue 1, but they've heard good things. They've heard through the grapevine that this series was good. So we've sold 16 copies of Volume 1 here of Green Arrow.
Yeah, it's really good. And you're right. That's comic book community is pretty close knit, and definitely word of mouth is definitely the best way of going with trying to get these books going. To keep it ongoing and trying to, like, when the story starts going stale, instead of stopping it, go, okay, we need to fix this. Let's just rebrand it right now. Instead of just doing that, just try to do what you can to make it a better story. If you need to put a new writer on it, put a new writer on it.
Yeah, it's pretty
If you need to
thinly
put a new
veiled.
artist, put a new artist on it. You don't need to renumber it just because you're doing that.
Yeah, it's pretty thinly veiled when we as readers can tell there was this kind of panic that this character, this storyline, this series wasn't going the way you planned or the way you'd hoped, and then the next thing we know is it ends and there's another issue 1 with those same characters. Look, bite the bullet, and don't end the series. If you got a writer who's just, hit a writer's block, get a new writer on there, have them start the series and continue it on the way they're doing with Astonishing X-Men. We just learned that with issue, I think it was 12 today?
Yeah, issue 12.
Either 10 or 12, I can't remember. They announced the back of that book there's going to be a new writer, a new artist, and a new lineup for the Astonishing X-Men, but the number will continue.
And then that's and that goes on to another alternative that we were going to address. I know that the biggest problem is, well,
maybe a
how
solution.
Yeah,
Sorry,
solution.
Say solution.
Solution.
Okay.
Yes, I know by putting it number 1, you're telling the readers, hey, that crap story that you're reading that was stale, it's gone. We're getting rid of it. It's it's forever burned. Yeah, I know. I'm trying to come up with a fun little adjective, and I couldn't think of anything because I'm trying to stay professional. But if you just advertise it, people are reading these books. Just advertise it within the books. And Marvel's not the only person that's doing that now. DC's kind of doing it too. They're doing a new creative team and a new lineup for their Teen Titans. And all their DC comic books that came out this week has a little preview of it. They're not renumbering that issue, though. It's still going to be Teen Titans number 20. That's how you do it. If the book is going stale and the sales are not meeting, you just mass advertise, not in issue 1, but you mass advertise that this issue, it's going to be an all-new team. We're changing things that you might not liked about the last issue. That's the reason why it started going stale.
Right.
That's what they used to do back in the day. That's what they should continue to do now.
Yeah.
And I think the thing with that is they also need to focus on hitting certain milestones in terms of numbers. Don't make it to where it's like issue 23, all of a sudden they reinvented the wheel. Get to 25, it's a nice, easy jumping point, an even number people can remember, and then throw in something different. Or
that way you can throw yourself a fucking
Right.
fireworks show when you hit issue 800.
Right. You
know?
hit issue 800 and they changed something with that arc and they got people interested and those were flying off the shelf. It was hard to find. What was it, 793 or 794?
Oh
when it
yeah,
started?
you between 792 to 800, you almost couldn't find those issues
They're-
at first print
yeah,
anymore.
Like almost like the very next week, they're all $20, $30 online or more now at this current moment. But at those times, they instantly spiked up in price because it was something different.
yeah,
And once again, it goes with word of mouth. Because
Right.
what ends up happening is if you introduce if you get a new writer, and I'm telling you, if you get a new writer on something and you put them on, like maybe that writer has been writing Spider-Man for, 10 years, like Dan Slott. The thing that makes it really interesting is you go, okay, so now he's going to be writing for Iron Man. What has he been sitting there cooking up for Iron Man? He's been sitting here thinking in Peter Parker mind. It makes it more interesting, and you best bet that they're going to have something that you've never really thought of for that character. So putting that new writer on that storyline, they're going to have some kind of, look, good example, Bendis on Superman. I know it's a number 1, but he came up with a new concept, something that we haven't heard of.
and Bendis is a big name. He's got a lot of
Yeah.
fans, and so you're going to get a lot of Marvel fans
Boom.
going out reading a DC
Right.
title because
And-
of the writer, because of he's written so many things that we as readers enjoyed. We're like, you know what, I'll take the chance and I'm going to see what he can do with Superman.
And
just
they also
advertise those
properly
things.
advertised
Yeah.
it. Every
Yeah.
DC book had a 2-page spread.
Properly,
Bendis is coming.
that could be an
All over
argument.
you.
That could be an argument.
be an argument.
It was properly, or if it was overdone. It was a little overdone.
It was a little overdone.
I'm a Bendis knob gobbler, but man, I'm telling you, if I had to see
guess-
another Bendis is coming post, like a splash page,
Oh,
I'm going
this
to
gets
vomit.
so
No,
dirty.
they
man.
definitely did
Bendis
need to
is
take
coming.
two.
It's spread
Bendis is
out,
coming
you
and
know,
it's spread out, and I'm just like, I was coming at first, and then after a while, I'm just like, I've seen the same vagina. You
Yeah,
know?
like I
I-
came a while ago.
They definitely didn't need the 2-page spread, but definitely they did advertising in a way that maybe I was only picking up one DC
they gave
title
us
every couple weeks. I saw that and I was like, wow. but if-
Exactly.
and I get, like, if I'm picking up every DC title and I see it every book, I'm like, Jesus.
Oh, they
okay,
gave us a
enough.
poster to hang in the window saying
Right.
Bendis is coming.
the
So,
exact same spread, too.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
But advertisement is the point.
Exactly. Advertise it. You don't need to renumber it. Keep it going. Change what you got to change. Just advertise it. People's probably, and I'm telling you, people might actually like it more than just the renumber.
yeah, we as the comic community, we're very forgiving in the sense that we're not forgiving when you fuck with our characters and you just completely,
Tony Stark adopted.
yeah, I was waiting for that one. We are not forgiving when it comes to that, but we are forgiving in the sense that, you know what, the past couple issues haven't been doing it for me. We all kind of give ourselves that milestone. You know what, I'm going to give it 2 or 3 more issues.
Right.
And I'm going to see how it goes. If it can't keep my interest, then I'm going to drop that title. But very rarely do you have the reader who comes in and goes, I didn't like that last issue, take it off. We're usually like, we have the endurance to say, I haven't been liking it lately. I'm gonna give it 3, 4, 5 more issues, whatever your threshold lies. But we do that. If in that span you get a new writer, a new penciler, maybe a new lineup on the team, whatever it is, right? In that time, if you can track that these sales numbers have been dipping, and in that time span, which if it's a monthly title, that's 5 months. You can get us back on board with a new team, that person, that reader, that collector, that they're going to continue that series and go,
Right.
you know what, I didn't like when Cullen Bunn was writing it, but when you put Rosenberg on it, you had me. And they transitioned from issue 11 to 12 or something like that. So,
And the other thing too is, it keeps the reader intrigued. Especially if you're somebody who actually does tough it out and read the whole run. It keeps them intrigued if you go, okay, so it was Miller, and then it goes to Bendis. It just not
or
using
Bendis
that.
to Brubaker.
Or Bendis to Brubaker.
Yeah.
It does keep it intriguing. Amazing Spider-Man 800 was a perfect example because yes, they used 4 different artists, But it kept you entertained because the artwork did change. Some people get annoyed by that kind of stuff, but at the same time, you can't really argue if it's keeping you entertained.
Right. It goes back to it being an investment.
Yeah.
We're a very investing community. Comic books aren't cheap, but they're not expensive for the most part. You can get a couple and stay into it, but there's
Not
so
break
many.
your bank.
Right. There's so many titles. It's an investment for us to get in and go back and collect all the Iron Mans or the Daredevils or any Bendis Knobgoblin you want to do over there.
Yeah.
It's we had to have one joking in there, but it's an investment for us to go back, and we're a dedicated community, and we will, like you said, tough it out 2, 3, 4 issues because we've had such an investment in terms of money and time and reading and emotions and passion and appreciation. That's just who we are as a community.
I can't tell you how many titles, and he could tell you because he used to sell me my comic books. I can't tell you how long I stuck it out on Titans and Nightwing before I finally went, I can't fucking do it no more. Or Batman. That was the other one, Tom King's Batman. I was just hoping that at some point something would happen to just make the story better. And you know what that would have made that story better? Taking Tom King off Batman. I know that I'm going to get a lot of shit for that because there's a lot of people out there who love fucking Tom King's Batman. But they should have changed that writer a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, I've had more people drop Batman in this shop than any other title. So, there's that.
Yeah. And so I can't remember on Nightwing, but I think I made it to about issue 20 before I bought 20 issues, and I only really probably enjoyed the first 10 maybe. Or, I can't really remember exactly because I really don't give a shit.
Yeah, and that's a twice a month issue. So you gave it 5 months, roughly 5-6 months,
yeah.
And then you were like, I don't want this anymore. So yeah, we are forgiving. If you see things are getting stale, get a new writer on there because you know what, we long for the stylistics of yesteryear where it's like Spider-Man got to 300, Spider-Man got to 400, and then throughout there, maybe you threw out the Spectacular Spider-Man or the Web of Spider-Man or whatever the others, or just Spider-Man, right? But the Amazing Spider-Man kept going, and it had different writers, it had different artists, it had different people on their take. But the thing is, that writer picked up where the last one left off, and they write their new story. They have to kind of continue from that, take the baggage, and go, okay, how am I going to continue Peter Parker's story? That's part of the challenge as a writer. And the thing is, we see that these publishers are letting the writers abandon whatever they just did that left off because they don't want to have them take over from the last one. Give them the challenge because that's what makes it more interesting. Hey, Daredevil just exposed his identity to the entire world, and everyone knows who Matt Murdock is. Now a new writer's coming on. How the fuck's this guy going to fix it? I'm interested. Right. Yeah. I want to see how this plays out now. Not, Daredevil, he exposes his identity. Issue 1.
I'm not going to lie, I thought you were going to say exposes himself.
No.
I think a good jumping off point connecting to that is for them to have a plan.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many times.
That's our next point.
There's so many times I feel like I jump into a story and it's all over the place and I'm like, okay, I don't know their plan. I get to issue 2 and 3. Like, there's no story here. I felt like they just pushed out issue 1 to make the sale with no story in mind. Whereas if I'm jumping on a title, there's a very clear story here. It has me intrigued. I see the plan and I'm like, I'm following this story, or I love this character because the way their direction's going, I see the plan, and I'm going to follow it until the end or until it gets stale, which then, like we said, as comic communities, we're forgiving. Hopefully they get back on the plan, and that goes with writers. Set out a plan. Don't just, last minute go, I don't know how to end this, let's just kill this character, and I don't care, I'm not going to deal with it, the next person's going to deal with it.
Right, and we've seen that the publishers, they can be very reactive, right, or reactionary. And
Warner
that's
Brothers.
not always a good. I was going to compare it to that. It's the way Warner Brothers has reacted to critics and audience reception to their movies. So they try in and they go and retool shit, and you get shit like Justice League, right? We see the comic book community or the publishers doing that with their comic books. Oh man, readers didn't like this. They didn't like this. Let's change it. Look, if the guy had a plan, if the writer had a plan, see it through. If you as the editor approved this story, see it through, because we are like blood sniffing hounds out there. We know as readers when you guys reacted to something that people were bitching about and you tried to give it a quick fix. Now you lost me as the reader because now I'm not invested because I know whatever you had planned is no longer going to be taking place.
Right.
You wanted to make sure that you didn't lose too many readers, so you backtracked. And don't do that. Have a plan. Set out. Say, hey, look, I've got an idea, Mr. Editor. I've got an idea for a Flash series, and I've got it planned out for 50 issues. let me tell my 50 issues. You're going to maybe see dips in sales here and there, whatever. You're going to see highs and lows. But stick with it because I've got a plan, okay? Don't go in here and do this whole, like, go into the editing bay with the director and go, nope, don't want that, pull that shit out. Don't like that. No, just let me tell my fucking story, okay? And the other thing they can do, too, is we as comic readers can also always sense the filler issue, right? The issue that you know was just put out there to keep you on consistent schedule, and you said, well, I got nothing to really tell because I want to transition, so here's this filler issue that I'm going to make you spend as much money as you were on every other issue. Don't let there be filler issues. Make every issue progress the story.
Right, and it doesn't have to be like, an epic introduction every issue.
No.
But I get your point. You can progress the story, and it may be something minor, but don't make it a filler issue where Peter Parker's going to the grocery store the entire issue.
Yeah, I mean, I love the Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps, but there have been 3 or 4 issues I can think of that I'm like, that was straight up filler issue.
Right.
That didn't need to be put out. They're setting up for something else. They're setting up for something new, and they kind of needed something to push out there to keep on schedule or, to be consistent on their twice a month thing. Just give me the next issue that continues.
The Flash is my example. The Flash, I love the Flash run, but there is, moments where it kind of dips down and goes in quality, but there's a bunch of filler issues. There's one issue that was completely pointless. That was just him teaming up with Hal Jordan. I mean, it was a good issue, don't get me wrong, but like I want a full story, but it was obvious that they're just kind of like, well, here's the thing. We want to have this whole Button miniseries kind of go on, so we're filling up we're going to put a little filler in here so we don't.
Yeah, and that's the editors kind of dictating, like, hey, we're going to have this Batman Flash crossover. I'm going to give you 2 issues for your little denouement here. Just,
right.
Kill some time, basically, until we get to this point, because we want it to line up with the Batman 21-22, Flash 21 and 22. Yeah.
Literally all we're trying to say is let the writers do what they need to do.
Yeah, just have a plan. Don't interfere, but have a plan. Don't okay a series if you're like, look, after 6 issues, I'm going to wing it.
Here's a good example. Brubaker's Captain America run. I don't recall there being any filler
issue.
That is a complete great story continuing from issue 1 to what it was like 37?
Yeah, something like
37. 37 fucking issues.
And I'll
no
tell you
fillers.
what, and there's a reason that entire series felt so cinematic. It's because you can just tell every detail was meticulously planned out, and, give it up to Steve Epting's art. The dude is a master at his craft, but everything felt so meticulously planned out, and it read so well. Like, literally, you read it, and there was a pace to this thing. It felt kind of like watching a movie play out when you were reading The Winter Soldier, then The Red Menace, then The Death of Cap. It's like all that stuff just played out in a way that just, you could tell it was planned. The guy went in with a plan, and he executed it, and you can tell no one was really fucking interfering with it. They just let him write his shit.
And I feel like part of, publishers pulling back is sometimes the comic community, as you said, if you go into the comments, it's very toxic at times. And I feel like if we're more patient with stories sometimes, as opposed to being like, you killed my favorite character, I hate you. If you let that writer do their 50-story arc, there might be a revival, because as we all know, people don't stay dead in comics.
Yeah.
They get revived. Just sit out the story. Let the writer tell their tale. You may not like it, but that doesn't mean other people don't. So you can drop the title, let other people enjoy it, pick it back up.
And here's a good example, and here's another good solution too. If for some reason the writer only had an story that lasts for about 12 issues, and the writer doesn't really know where else to go, perfect filler. Instead of just putting one bullshit issue out real fast, why don't you put one of those miniseries that people keep putting out too? I mean, that's something that they used to do back in the day. Spider-Man, it wasn't like it was a complete ongoing thing, but it felt like it was complete ongoing. But every once in a great while, you have like a 2-part separate story, that was just kind of put in there. That's how you do it, You just kind of put these, instead of making a miniseries where you're just like, well, that Spider-Man story would be great, we should make it out in issue 1. Just fit it into the ongoing series. It will work, because there is going to be spots in between stories where the writer might not know exactly what he's going to do with Peter next.
Right, and I think with that, jumping off that, some stories do it well, where, an event happens, they don't have anything to do, and I don't mean literally a comic event, I just mean something happens, And then all of a sudden, the next issue, that's that filler issue, but they tell something from someone else's perspective who was there. Someone saw something, and not necessarily a crossover, but a citizen saw it and told their story.
Which we saw in Bendis's Daredevil. We saw, I think, at least 2 issues told from the perspective of Ben Urich, where David Mack did all the art, all the interior art in that. And you know what? It didn't lose me at all. I'm like, okay, this feels like something that I can get behind and read, which brings us to the next solution or alternative, which is give us, as readers, something to invest in. If you're going to make a promise, like in issue 1, give us a reason to invest in this. Don't cut it short. Don't try and pull the wool over our eyes and go, well, we only really had this plan for 6 issues, but we didn't put it on the cover 1 of 6, blah, blah, blah. Give us something to invest in. We, as readers, like long-form storytelling, right? There's a reason that I loved Invincible so much. It's 144 issues, and each one of those issues was built on top of the last. There were things that happened 30 issues ago that finally paid off. That's the kind of shit that we like. That's something that we can invest in. That's something that makes us look forward to it. Not just go, okay, well, I'm picking up the next Spider-Man issue. It's like, no, I'm really looking forward to this next issue. Or Saga, 53 issues in right now. All of it is mythology built up on the last issue. You can't read issue 53 without having read issue 3 or some, you just can't do it. And I understand that kind of negates the whole idea of bringing in new readership, but again, word of mouth will spread. Give us something to invest in. I think today we checked, we had sold 7 volume 1s of Saga.
Yep.
And so, word of mouth spreads. People talk. They're like, hey, I heard about this thing Saga. Or I'll talk to somebody like, hey, look, if you're looking for
non-comic book readers try to push that on me when it first came out. Just word of mouth will travel. If you put, especially if it's good enough, it will make news.
Yeah, we talk. We talk to each other. I mean, we are a close-knit community, but we do talk. We talk about the series that we do like. We talk about the series that we don't like. Right now, there's really nothing out of the main 2 publishers that's blowing my hair back that makes me go, I could really recommend this right now.
And see, and that's the thing too. Like with Image and some of the lower indies, this category really don't fit for a lot of their titles, I feel, because some stories are meant to only be 30 issues. They shouldn't go any further than that. Irredeemable is one story. I love that story.
Again,
I love that run.
It's an example of long-form storytelling.
Yeah.
It's about 37 issues.
You can
invest in 37 issues.
And I can invest in 37 issues. But I don't want to see it any longer. Marvel and DC has a really good thing, and a really good thing that they're not utilizing that these other companies do not have. They have characters that could be long-going, that could hit 200, 300, 200 and 300, issues, because they're characters that readers are going to want to continue to read. That's the reason why they're still making comic books of these characters. And Marvel and DC are not really utilizing that because they're constantly renumbering. But you got these Image titles that are like Spawn that still never went to
260 some issues in right now.
Yeah. So some titles in the lower indies, I can understand keeping them kind of short, but Marvel and DC, you have these beautiful characters that people want to continue reading, that they don't want it to end. And if you have a good story, the readers are going to keep reading it because they're not going to want it to end. If you make a 12-issue story and it was a great run, that's great, but you're leaving your reader probably wanting more.
Yeah, I mean, there are plenty of series that I've jumped into where I just knew there was a new story arc starting. It wasn't renumbering, but maybe issue 40 was the start of a new story arc, and I went, all right, you know what, I'll jump on there because I've heard that this is part 1 of a story arc. I'll jump on, see what I think. Hey, man, talking to somebody who maybe referenced or recommended it to me, and I go, hey, I was reading it, I really like it, but they're referencing all these things that happened in the past. And it made me go and pick up, the series before that started before that. I went to the volume 1. That's what trade paperbacks are so great for, is catching up on series.
Right. So, in Marvel and DC, if you're worried if that's going to hurt you, it's not, because they're like $14, $15.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that also takes us into our last couple talking points, which is, I think, especially between Marvel and DC, you need to regain the reader's faith, right? Like, there are so many times, like these issue 1s, they make us lose our faith in these comic books because we can't invest in them. It's like, okay, well, I read that 6-issue thing, now it's back to issue 1. Like, I can't. Rocket, perfect example. Rocket had a 5-issue series, then right after that, there's another Rocket issue 1. Went 5 issues. You can't invest in 5 issues. You can't tell a great, groundbreaking, character-defining story arc in 5 issues. It's just almost impossible to do, right? Regain our faith. Give us something to invest in. And the way you can regain our faith is take a fucking risk, take a chance, do something new with these characters. I mean, I know they did it with Nick Spencer's Captain America, and it caught so much flack. There's no way Captain America is a Nazi. But guess what? Secret Empire Zero was one of the highest selling issues of 2017.
And whether you liked it or not, I can't tell you the amount of people that I saw either sharing it online that don't read comics that were like either outraged or excited, even though they don't read. They were just like, Captain America can't be a Nazi, and then there's people like, hey, this is a cool new different direction for a character. While I don't like them, this is cool that they're doing it. There's so much appreciation and hate, but at least conversation and word of mouth about that title. Whether, like I said, you liked it or not, it was still huge because they took a leap of faith that paid off to some people.
Yeah, I think it did. I mean, I don't think Secret Empire ended on the best note because it just felt rushed in a way. But like, you had me. At issue 0, you had me. Issue 1, 2, 3, you had me. Starts to dip off in the storytelling quality later, but you had me because I'm like, this is interesting. This is something new. This is something that I didn't see coming. It doesn't feel like the same rehashed kind of Captain America romp that I'm used to.
Right.
So I feel like sometimes these publishers are learning the wrong lessons. Issue 1s are an instant return, right? We put out this issue 1, look at all this money we just got. But if you guys want to sustain your business, you want to keep readers going, you got to give us something to invest in. Give us the long-term solutions, and the long-term solutions are taking a risk and giving us long-form storytelling. That is the way you will pull in more readers, because these people will go, oh my God, this series is so good. You got to read it. They're going to recommend it to their friends, and those friends, they'll start from volume 1. Right. And then you'll see trade paperback, graphic novel sales go up until they catch up to the current issue, which is what I did with New 52 Batman. I didn't jump on it right away. So I got the first 3 volumes. It's like, wow, that's really cool. Oh shit, volume 4 just came out. Volume 4, bam, got it. Next thing I know is I'm collecting every new issue that comes out until the very end of that series. That has to be your game plan. You need to aim for the people who are gonna pick up this series from the very beginning, but you're not gonna catch them at the very beginning every time. You just gotta know, you gotta have faith in your writers, you gotta have faith in your characters, faith in your stories, that it's gonna get around, that this story is so good, it's gonna bring people back to volume 1. They're gonna go to the beginning, and then they're gonna catch up to the new releases every month or every 2 weeks.
See, taking a risk, it sometimes works and it doesn't, but 2 really good examples that I have of recent memory was the Punisher series, where him and War Machine, he got the War Machine suit. Whether that was a groundbreaking story, it wasn't the best-telling story, but at least got me interested in Punisher again, because I was like, this is something new and different, whereas the Punisher most of the time is written as a one-dimensional, I'm going to explode and destroy everything, which this has some moments of that and other things, but it was a different direction, and it got me actually buying this series, whereas I haven't bought Punisher in years.
Yeah.
And then The Amazing Spider-Man is another different direction on a take of a character. It got me interested, and it's probably one of my favorite modern comics, this current arc. And so take a risk. Don't like defile the character and completely change everything and ruin them, but take a risk.
Find a way to deconstruct these heroes in a way. Shed some light in a way that we've never really thought about these characters before.
Right.
And I'm going to use an example because I'm the Bendis Knob Gobbler. Avengers Disassemble. The dude totally ripped up the Avengers, broke them up, and made a new Avengers team. And the storyline was fantastic, and also the sales were great on that book. And the trade sales, I don't know about in other comic book stores, but I know here they're decent. I mean, we can't even keep it on this shelf.
Last I looked, we had sold 12 copies of just Avengers Disassembled, and like 10 copies of the Volume 1 that actually has Avengers Disassembled in it. That's a $40 book.
I was about to say, it's a $40 book.
And we just reordered it again today.
Yeah. I mean,
you
gotta take the risk.
That's what people want.
You gotta get something where it's like you take a character and you go, okay, so this is what's going to happen to this character, and you kind of advertise it, just kind of give a little tease to it or something, and then people are going to talk about it. It's going to be on the news, and then people's going to go out and grab it, and then just keep it a long form storytelling.
I think that if these publishers were to really take a step back and go outside of events, outside of issue 1s, what are the things we saw that sold the best?
Right.
And I guarantee you those are going to be series that went 30 to 40 plus issues, because that's what people want. They want the long form storytelling. We want to follow these characters like a soap opera.
Right.
You know, we don't want the constant reset button on these things.
My best example, I think, of all time for taking a risk is Daredevil Born Again. Kingpin finds out who he is, and he completely just ruins him. He doesn't publish it, doesn't tell anyone, and it, like you said, take apart your heroes, pick them apart, find out what makes them a hero, and that was the book that got me hooked on Daredevil. That run, because they took a risk, whereas it wasn't your standard, over and over same shit happening. It was something different, and it wasn't like defaming the character and ruining him. It was still within line of the character. And you can't be afraid to take these opportunities to change things just because we love these characters. It's not a fail-safe or a reason to block it from changing these. You need to take these risks for new, fresh takes and new writers, new artists, new pencilers, new characters. Take these risks and these leaps of faith so that we regain faith in you.
Yep.
I mean, the other taking risk factors, killing Barry Allen and keeping him dead for a decade.
Closer to 2, I think.
Yeah, closer to 2. And then also another thing too is, like, think about this: Amazing Spider-Man, the first volume run. One of the key storylines that most pops in most people's head when they think that, Gwen Stacy's death.
Yep.
Like, that sticks out like a sore fucking thumb. It's that right there. I mean, that's taking a fucking risk.
Right. It was character defining as well.
Yeah. Making Tony Stark adopted. That's taking a fucking risk.
Whether it was successful or not is another argument, but anyways, so
I think that's the most agreement you will ever get on that topic right there.
I know.
I'm not agreeing or disagreeing that it's good or bad.
It's not. It wasn't good, but it is taking
It does
a
fit this
risk.
point.
all right. So just to recap really quick, guys, we went over the intentions of these publishers, why they're doing the issue 1s, what the pros are, what the cons are, and what the solutions are is to focus more on your continuing stories. You need to have a plan and advertise these series as they continue. Give the reader something to invest in, regain our faith, and come on, just take a risk. Stop playing it safe, because no one ever broke new ground playing it safe. So, guys, I hope you really liked our take on this. Actually, I think we, all three of us, really enjoyed doing this. We enjoyed preparing for it. We enjoyed discussing it. And I think actually here, I mean, you heard that this conversation was probably a little bit more serious-minded than usual.
Yeah.
But that's because this is something that we actually care about.
Penis.
Gotta
There's
break the
the one.
tension. There it is. But guys, if you like this, please let us know down in the comments below what you think. How do you feel about issue 1s? Do you think that we're right on the money? Did we miss anything that you would suggest talking about maybe in a future installment? Is there an angle we didn't quite see? Please let us know. Hit that thumbs up button. If you came here from Twitter, hit that thumbs down button. And if you're not a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button, guys. And the next Tuesday, we will see you guys here again with the new This Week's Poll, as we're doing that on Tuesday nights now. And next week, we will be doing another segment on how to fix the comic industry. So thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week.